With me now is Mark Sedra, a senior fellow at the Center for International Governance Innovation, and he's an expert on Afghanistan. He joins us tonight to talk more about this. Hi there. Thanks for being with us. I want to talk a little bit more about IEDs because we hear about them, but I'm not sure if everyone knows how they're made and how do they work.
Okay, well, these type of devices, they range in sophistication from very simple devices that are put together in the home to a very sophisticated military hardware. We've seen a lot that some of the designs of IEDs that are being used in Afghanistan were actually first tried and tested in Iraq. Most likely, this experience and know-how was transferred to Afghanistan via Al-Qaeda operatives. These types of devices, they're just very difficult to defend against. The Taliban is continually reevaluating coalition and NATO strategy and adapting how they use these. So they're a very effective tool for the Taliban.
And they're laid specifically to kill and injure soldiers, I'm assuming. And I'm also wondering about civilian casualties. How those aren't being reported as much, or how are people being affected in Afghanistan by these IEDs?
Oh, there's a huge number of civilian casualties. There was around 1,500 civilian casualties last year, many of which were caused by IEDs. So, certainly these are being used both to target military forces and civilians. The thing about military forces is that the Taliban don't have the technological sophistication or the troop numbers in order to match the coalition or NATO forces in conventional military operations. So they have to use guerrilla tactics and weapons such as IEDs.
So General McChrystal is calling for more troops. Is this going to help?
Well, one of the arguments for more troops is that if you have more troops on the ground, then you don't have to rely as much on air power. And the problem with air power is when it's used extensively that inevitably civilians are killed. And we saw a large-scale collateral damage just in the last couple weeks where a large number of Afghans were inadvertently killed, which just turns Afghan public opinion against the mission and against the Afghan government and international forces. So I think it's important in some respects that more troops hit the ground, but I think tough questions have to be asked on how they're going to be used. I think the real focus has to be on providing an enabling environment for development to take place, to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people, and to protect the Afghan population, because inevitably no counterinsurgency has ever succeeded unless you have the support of the local population.
So is that happening to any degree?
Well, to a certain degree, there have been successes. I mean, we only hear in the news about the failures, of course, but there has been some successes. But certainly, as we've seen in the media, and the insecurity is spreading across Afghanistan. The Taliban are making headway, and they are certainly increasing the number of civilian and military casualties that they're able to actually create. So I think that this is a disturbing sign for the future of the mission.
Speaking of the mission overall, at this point, where do you think public support lies?
Well, we've seen in public opinion surveys in Canada, but also in many other NATO countries, that support for the mission is wavering. I think that is something that is going to be a major concern for both political and military leaders. I think that it's understandable to a certain degree because, especially when people see the results of this election, which was riddled with fraud, they're asking themselves what exactly are our troops sacrificing themselves for. However, I would remind people that significant progress has been made. We've seen significant economic growth, double-digit economic growth for many years. We've seen millions of refugees return to Afghanistan, millions of children going back to school, and the flowering in certain areas of civil society. So I think that significant progress has been made, but we also have to be aware that this is a tough fight that's still ahead.
Mark Sedra, thanks so much for talking to us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.